Strange New Worlds is a better Kirk story than the one J.J. Abrams Star Trek rushed through. When J.J. Abrams rebooted Star Trek in 2009, one of his boldest moves was to present audiences with a new, younger James T. Kirk. Gone was the seasoned Starfleet captain audiences knew from William Shatner's performance. In his place stood Chris Pine's reckless, rebellious cadet who got the captain's chair by the end of the film. The breakneck pace of Abrams' story made for thrilling cinema, but left little room for a nuanced exploration of Kirk's growth. By contrast, Star Trek: Strange New Worlds has quietly been doing what the movies never could, telling a layered, patient, and dramatically satisfying story about how James Kirk became James T. Kirk. The problem with the fast-track Kirk: Abrams' first film was designed as a high-octane blockbuster that would make Star Trek feel contemporary and accessible. In doing so, it condensed Kirk's journey from rebellious Iowa farm boy to starship captain into a 2-hour movie. By the end of Star Trek 2009, Kirk had gone from a bar fight to the bridge of the Enterprise without the years of service and mentorship that define the original character. While this worked as an origin story shorthand, it robbed the audience of the chance to see Kirk evolve gradually, to watch him earn his leadership stripes. Even in Star Trek Into Darkness, which tried to address Kirk's immaturity by showing the consequences of his impulsiveness, the arc still felt rushed. He loses his command, regains it, sacrifices himself, and is revived, all in one film. The emotional beats lacked the weight of time. Kirk was perpetually learning lessons, without the lived-in history to make them resonate. It was a dazzling performance by Pine, but the character's transformation always felt like a montage rather than a lived experience. Strange New Worlds Kirk is allowed to breathe. Enter Star Trek: Strange New Worlds, which gave fans a surprising gift. A chance to meet James Kirk before he's the captain of the Enterprise. Paul Wesley's version of the character is not a carbon copy of Shatner or Pine, but a fresh take on Kirk's formative years. He's ambitious, competent, and charismatic, but crucially not yet at his peak. In the show, Kirk serves aboard the USS Farragut and crosses paths with Captain Pike and the Enterprise crew in select episodes. This allows audiences to see him in situations where he's not in charge, but is clearly a leader in the making. This incremental approach restores a sense of realism to Kirk's career. We see him making tough decisions without the full weight of command, building relationships with future colleagues like Spock, and negotiating Starfleet's chain of command. Wesley's Kirk isn't the brash golden boy fast-tracked to greatness. He's a young officer learning the ropes, shaped by the circumstances around him. This portrayal echoes how the original series often depicted Kirk, as someone who had earned his reputation, not someone handed it by a plot twist. The Pike factor. Another strength of Strange New Worlds is the inclusion of Captain Christopher Pike as a mentor figure. In the Abrams films, Kirk's rise to captaincy largely happened without a guiding hand. Aside from a few lines from Captain Pike played by Bruce Greenwood, the mentorship was hinted at but never developed. In Strange New Worlds, Anson Mount's Pike embodies the kind of steady leadership Kirk is still aspiring to. Their interactions, even when brief, contextualize Kirk's future style of command. This dynamic is vital to understanding Kirk's growth. Seeing how he learns from Pike's calm, measured approach allows viewers to imagine how those lessons later shape the more daring, instinct-driven captain he becomes. The show doesn't hammer this home with melodrama. It just lets these characters exist in the same orbit long enough for us to see the influence. Space for vulnerability. Because Strange New Worlds is episodic rather than a blockbuster film, it can take its time showing Kirk's vulnerabilities. We've seen him in alternate timelines, facing personal loss, and grappling with moral dilemmas without the shield of rank to protect him. These glimpses of doubt and growth make him more relatable and human. When he eventually takes command of the Enterprise, as everyone knows he will, it will feel earned, not inevitable. Compare that to the Abrams films, where Kirk's self-destructive tendencies were crammed into plot twists designed to mimic emotional growth. In Into Darkness, for example, Kirk's death and resurrection were meant as a climactic payoff, but they lacked the gravitas of Spock's sacrifice in The Wrath of Khan because audiences hadn't lived with this version of Kirk long enough to feel it. Strange New Worlds avoids that trap by playing the long game. A Kirk story for the streaming era. The difference ultimately comes down to format. Films demand urgency and spectacle. Television can afford patience and detail. Strange New Worlds leverages the streaming era's strengths to give Kirk a slow-burn origin story that feels more in line with the franchise's roots. By showing him as an ambitious young officer alongside Pike and Spock, the show is creating a tapestry of experiences that will one day justify his reputation as Starfleet's finest,